Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Carolee Makes Cards. I thought I'd jump on the Christmas in July bandwagon before the month was through with this adorable stamp set by Simon Says Stamp called Critter Sweaters. This is an older stamp die set, but it is so unique and cute, I just love it and had to use it again. So let's get started with this set of 6 cards that requires no coloring and have been put together in assembly line fashion. I began by die cutting the critters in white, craft, ivory, soft gray, and medium gray cardstock. Because I planned to change up the design and the color combination for each grouping of critters, I thought it would be easiest to line up these stamps on acrylic blocks rather than using the MISTI. The sweater designs have been stamped with Distress Oxide inks. For this first grouping of a bear and 2 bunnies, I am using Shaded Lilac, Spun Sugar, and Candied Apple. I'm sorry that you have to see the top of my head periodically. I don't stamp with acrylic blocks very often, and to make sure that the design is lined up, I do have to lean into it. The next group of critters is out of craft cardstock, and I am using Rustic Wilderness, Abandoned Coral, and Spice Marmalade. For the other color combinations that I have used for each grouping, you can check out my blog at bonniecarolee.com. I lined up all my small acrylic blocks. Each one had a face or one of the details, and with Simon Says Intense Black ink, I was ready to start stamping. And just as I was about to start, I dropped my inked stamp. Thank goodness for Tombo's sand eraser. I did have to work away at it. I didn't apply too much pressure. I just rubbed back and forth until it started to fade away. I had 22 critters in total, and stamping their faces was a very quick job. And it was fun because it really brings those animals to life. Before stamping the initial faces, I did stamp on scrap paper so that I would know how to line them up on the die cut image. For all the bears, I decided to include the cute little bow tie detail. The set also includes a solid circle. The bear's ears were stamped with spun sugar. I continued stamping the faces one set at a time until they were all completed. If you like to get creative with your colors and work with different designs, this is definitely an awesome little stamp set to work with. So the next thing that I did was to prepare the backgrounds for the critters. I'm using a tone-on-tone technique. I will be using various red rubber stamps from Simon Says Stamp to create the backgrounds. Because these stamps are so thick, the insert from the MISTI has been removed. For my only slimline card out of the group, I am using the stamp called Falling Snow. It is being stamped with Simon Says Stamp Blue Violet ink on their cardstock of the same name. When using dye inks, cleaning your stamps can be quite a challenge, and you definitely need a stamp cleaner. I love Simon Says Stamps. It has a dauber end and makes it very easy to use. After the stamp cleaner is applied, I use a baby wipe just to pick up all that ink. And voila, it is just like new. But more importantly, when you go to use your stamp again, you're not going to have any issues. This background has been stamped with Maud Trees using Simon's Peacock Teal ink and cardstock. I love the leaves and berries background stamp. It is versatile enough to be used at Christmas and any other time of the year. I didn't have the coordinating ink for Simon's burnt orange cardstock. I substituted ripe persimmon distress oxide for that tone-on-tone effect. Again, I had to make a substitution when working with Simon's Island Blue cardstock. The beautiful damask background stamp was inked with Distress Oxide ink, Mermaid Lagoon. Simon's Schoolhouse Red cardstock was stamped with the ink of the same name. For this background, I used a gorgeous stamp called Ornate. My last background was stamped using all snowflakes on cotton candy cardstock and the ink of the same name. I used various dies from Simon's Laird Hills die set to create several snowbanks for the cards. After deciding which set of critters would go with each background, they were laid out so that I would know where to position the sentiment. The Critter Sweater stamp set comes with 2 sentiments, Warm Winter Wishes and Merry Christmas. Each of the sentiments is used on 3 of the cards. They are stamped with black VersaFine ink and embossed with clear embossing powder. The clear embossing really helps that sentiment to pop. All of the cards that will have the Warm Winter Wishes sentiment are stamped first, and then I move on to the cards with the Merry Christmas sentiment. The snowy hillside landscape for each card is done slightly differently. Although the number of hillsides may not be the same for all of the cards, what is the same is that the hillside in the foreground has been mounted on white sheet foam. After these 6 hillsides are trimmed out, I then stop the assembly line approach and work on the cards one at a time. I do make sure as I'm working that I keep all the elements that are going to go with a particular background together. I begin with the slimline card. The bunny die is used to cut white sheet foam and the bunny is mounted on it. When the 2 critters have been adhered to the foreground, I shift gears and start working on those elements that are furthest away. I want to position the elements more or less the way I had them initially. The hillside is flipped around to help me mark where the bear is going to go. Once I have the background snowbank in place where I want it, then I go ahead and attach it to the card and trim it down to size. To make sure that the snowbank is exactly the same width as the background, the panel is flipped around. The blade of the scissors is pushed up against the side of the panel, which helps guide it for a nice even cut. Before adhering the foam-backed foreground to the panel, some dimensional squares are used at the back of the kitty's head to help stabilize him. All 3 bunnies for this card were stacked on foam die cuts. The snowbank in the background was attached to the card. Placing the foreground back on the card helps to position the kitty in the correct place. All that's left to do is to adhere the foam-backed elements, the foreground, and the 3 little bunnies. All of the cards in this series were completed in exactly the same way, with just a few minor variations from one to another. All of the background panels are mounted on white sheet foam. This is a pretty standard practice for me. I just like the quality that it gives the overall card. The cards are sturdy and they go through the mail well. The foam back panels were adhered to cardstock that was the same color as the critters for the card. The only exception were the two cards with the white critters. Those panels were mounted on dark gray cardstock before being attached to A2 size top folding card bases. I did miss a couple of pieces of information that I'll just add in now. For the A2 size cards, the background panel after it was stamped was die cut with My Favorite Things largest stitched rectangle die in the Stacks 2 set. For the slimline card, the background panel was die cut with the second largest die in Pink Fresh Studio slim stitched rectangles, which by the way does not have stitching detail on it as it is meant as a layer. I did use the largest one with the stitched detail to cut out the panel that it would sit on. This card was mounted to a card base that measured 3 3/4 inches by 8 3/4 inches. Black Nouveau drops were used to accent the bunny and kitty noses and the bear's eyes. So my motto is, if you've got something, use it. And I've got lots of Nouveau drops, and so of course I have to use them. Dot detail was added to the Christmas sweaters. For this card, I used Dream Drops Dragon Scales. I love Dream Drops because it has such a shimmery finish. Crystal Drops Caribbean Blue, one of my favorite shades of blue, accent the sweaters on this card. For the slimline card, I'm using the Yummy Crystal Drops Crushed Grape. For the card with the red background, I use Vintage Drops Postbox Red. And for the orange card, Crystal Drops Ripened Pumpkin, and the pink card, Crystal Drops Bubblegum. And that wraps up this set of 6 Christmas cards featuring Simon Says Stamps Critter Sweaters. Such an adorable and unique set. As always, I appreciate your visit.